Hello. One of the coolest things about jQuery is it makes it so easy to add stuff and remove stuff from a page without reloading the page. You can add or remove any kind of object at all. Images, text, entire divs full of text, anything at all. So we're going to learn about 4 methods that jQuery has that make this pretty easy, and they're called before, after, prepend, and append. So we're going to work with this page, simple page. It has one H1. It has 2 paragraphs. The one paragraph has no styles. The other paragraph has a class named Brown. Okay? Now by the end of the video, we're going to have a page that looks like this and works like this. So the user can type something into the field, and then depending on which button they push, the text that was typed in the field will show up at a particular point on the page relative to that brown paragraph that you see. And if they typed in other text, right, the other text would be inserted. So back to our basic page that we're starting with, okay? We'll do this one step at a time. So we are going to look quickly at the index page, right? So normal head, H1, P, and then of course our script tags at the bottom, okay? So in our JavaScript, we don't have anything at all so far. Oh, and I forgot to show you this P, the brown paragraph, the class is brown. If I want to use that paragraph as a jQuery object, I'm going to address it in the typical jQuery way. And since it's a class, I need a dot, and the class name is brown. So now I can do things to that paragraph. And you might be thinking, well, if I'm going to add things to the page, that paragraph's already there. But we can use that paragraph as a placement marker. So we can say the stuff I want to add it before that paragraph, or after it, or inside it at the top, or inside it at the bottom. So the first one of those is before. That's all you have to write. And let's say we just wanted to add the word before. Okay, so that's how we do it. And let's copy that and paste it 3 times, and we'll do all the things at once. The 4 methods that I'm talking about. So the second one is after, makes whatever we add go after. So we're just going to add this one word, one string. Then prepend goes inside the target. Our target is the thing with the class of brown. So prepend will be inside at the top, and append will be inside at the bottom. I'm going to save, and let's see. So our page hasn't changed because that jQuery hadn't been written yet when I first loaded this, right? So I'll reload my page, and all the things that we wanted have been added. So the word before came in before. The word after came in after. The word prepend came in inside the paragraph at the top. And append came in inside the paragraph at the bottom. So let's make one change to make this a little easier to look at. And let's add paragraph tags. Now they're inside the string. Whatever you're adding is going to be a string or an object. So you'll see that I added the tags inside the quotation marks, okay? So I'm going to save my jQuery file, go back to my HTML, and reload. And of course, that made the 4 strings act as paragraphs within the HTML. So this is not, what I've just shown you is not all that useful, because if we wanted those things to be on the page when the page initially loads, we could have just put them in the HTML, right? So how can we make this a little bit interactive? I think that we could add some buttons that allow us to choose whether we want to add something before, after, or inside at the top or inside at the bottom. So let's go over to our HTML, and let's see, right above the paragraph, let's add some divs that we will style as buttons. So the first one would say before, and I will copy that 3 times. Okay, so I'm just going to use plain divs and save. And in my CSS, I already have some styles for those divs. So they're going to be inline block, meaning they don't go 100% of the width of the page, but instead they'll only be as wide as they need to be based on what they contain. I've got some margins and some padding, and the text will be centered, and they've got an orange background. So let's see, what will they look like right now? Okay, so that's what they look like right now. And what we want to do is make each of these buttons add a string to the place where it says they would. So when we click the after button, it will add something after, like below the brown paragraph. And when we say prepend, it will put something here, okay? So that's what we're going to now do in the jQuery. So we've got our 4 divs that look like buttons, and we will go into the JavaScript file, and we're going to need to make 4 event listeners, right? Because 4 buttons, that's 4 different things to listen on. Or do we have to make 4 separate event listers? They're all divs, so we can actually make 1 event listener that listens for a click on any div at all. Any div, because those are the only divs on our page, right? So any click on a div is going to be one of our 4 orange buttons. So that's what we're going to work with now. So one event listener is going to look like this. Okay, and our stuff is going to go in here, whatever we're putting in, right? Let's see. So let's comment these out for the moment, and I'll do a mass comment. So I know from before that this event listener is going to listen on all the divs on the page, all the ones we've got, and when a click happens on any div, the code that I write in here will be executed. And I know I want to have this stuff happen, but I have to have it happen depending on which button was clicked. And this is actually a huge point of this video, to let you think about, well, how do I differentiate if I'm going to listen for a click on all the divs, or perhaps on all the things that have a certain class? That's another way to do it. How am I going to know which one was clicked on, right? Now, you might think you're going to have to add an ID to every button, right? No. That's extra work, extra code that you don't need. What already differentiates these 4 buttons from one another is that each one has a unique contents that's pretty short and easy to work with. So jQuery can actually allow us to detect what is the content of this div, and we can use that to find out which div was clicked. So that's what I'm going to show you now. jQuery has a way to tell us which was the exact thing that was clicked on just now. And I'm going to write that in here where we had a comment for a moment. I'm going to paste it actually. So it gets the current target of the event that just happened. Now right now, jQuery wouldn't know what does event mean, because event is just a variable. and we haven't actually declared that variable anywhere yet. And the way we do that in the middle of the event handler is to write event here. I know this may be confusing, but it's a really typical thing. You're going to see it in all kinds of tutorials and so forth, and people will use either the word event or the letter E. And then whatever you say, this is the variable representing the event, then you use that again down in the code. So in this case, it would know what the event is, but what we want is, we want what is the text inside that div, the div that was the current target. And there's a way to get that too. jQuery has a method, text, and it'll get the text out of the current thing, or the object that the text method is being used on. So this would get that, but we still couldn't see it, right? So when we want to see something, and in this case we're just testing, we're going to use our old friend console log. Console log, there we go. And we're going to grab this out of here and put it into the parentheses so that when we click on a div, we're going to log to the console the text of the exact one that was clicked on. All right, so let's see if this works or not. So we'll save, and we'll go over here, and we'll reload. And we also need to open the console log, right? Because you can't tell what console log is doing unless you have the console open. And so there it is. Okay, so now if I click on append, look at that. We see append. Prepend, after, before, prepend, after, append, before, right? So it's working. So all we did now was test it. Can we use the text inside the div? And we can. And now we know what code can make that happen. So we're going to rewrite the code a little bit so we can check which div was clicked. And if after was clicked, write the stuff into the page after brown. If before was clicked, write stuff before brown, and so on. Okay, so here's where your algorithmic thinking comes in, your problem solving. So now you know how to get the text of the button, which tells you which button was pushed. And we also know how to write into that particular location on the page. So how are we going to get them combined? How are we going to put them together to make something that works in here, of course, right? So when you think about what I want to do is figure out which button is clicked. No, I already did that. I want to do something depending on which button was clicked. So if it was one button, I want to do one thing. And if it was another button, I'm saying if, aren't I? Yeah, I'm saying if. So we know what we need to do. We're going to have if something, then something, right? And we're going to have else if something, else if something else, then we're going to do something else. So let's see, we're going to have if this text is equal to, and what's it look like? Like this, right? Got to have the capital letter and so forth. It's got to match exactly. So if the text is equal to before, I'm going to do this, right? Yeah. And how many else ifs am I going to need? I am going to need 1, 2, 3, right? So let's copy them this way. Okay, that's 2 and that's 3. All right, so I'm going to have this same thing basically inside here. Oh, and then I realized, do I really need that long event, current target, text. You know what? There's a better way to do that. There is a better way to do that. Why don't I just stick that into a variable? Let the div, or even say div text equal, right? Not that. All right, do you see what I did? I've made a new variable named div text. And whenever a div is clicked, that variable is going to contain the text. Oh, that's going to be so much shorter and easier. So I'm going to use that instead of this big mess, right? Okay, so if div text equals before, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's just copy that into all the little parentheses, right? But it's not going to be before every time. It's going to be before and after and prepend and append. And we can check back and make sure that is exactly what the text is going to be. So when this happens, right, we get the text, we put it into here, it is going to match exactly what we saw here, which is why it's good to test stuff in the console. All right, so let's see, we won't need the console log anymore because that was just for testing. Get rid of that. And what remains to be filled in? Oh, we have to bring all these up. So we have the before, the after, the prepend, and the append, right? And so we just need to grab each of these and put it where it belongs. Append, prepend, after. Okay, cool. And we wouldn't need this anymore either, but let's keep it there just for the moment. So should this work, we have any div that's clicked will cause this to happen. And when any div is clicked, first we will grab that event and get the text out of its target. The target was the div, so the text would be what's written in the div, and we'll put it in this variable. Then if that variable contains before, we'll do this. And if that variable instead contains after, we'll do this, and so on. I didn't put an else down here. We could, we don't have to, up to you. But this is saved, and so if I run this, it should work. All right, so if I click after, sure enough, something went after. And if I click append, something was appended. And if I click prepend, something was prepended. And if I click before, whoa, all right, so it works. So this is the code, and there's one more thing that I want to show you about this, because we can also make this more useful, more interactive, if we were to allow the user to type something. And then we would append that to the page, or before the brown paragraph or after the brown paragraph, right? So there's one more step here because I'm trying to demonstrate to you how jQuery can do just about anything to your page if you just look up which method is the one you should use. So our first job is to put a form field into the HTML, right? So where would we like to put that? We would probably put it below the paragraph, right, like that. And because this is just one type in the box field or form control, we actually don't even need a form. We don't need a name. We don't need anything except this. Although we might like to wrap it in a paragraph just to give it spacing. We could put extra CSS on it, but we'll just be lazy and put a paragraph on it. And we would probably say something up here like, please type something into the box, right? Okay, so that is going to change what we have on our page. And that's the only change we need to make to the index, okay? But remember that we used the input element and it's type equals text, right? And that's the main thing we added. So let's see how our page looks now. And sure enough, there is a nice box that we could type in, right? Of course, nothing happens now, just the same old things that happened before, right? But we do have a box that we can type into. So the next step is to do something inside the JavaScript to make sure that something happens when somebody has typed into the box. So we need to go into our JavaScript, and I will let you know that the way that we make the form control that is an input with the type of text into a jQuery object is like this, what I've just pasted here. So I'm going to add a little space after the parentheses, but before the quotation marks, so that you can see exactly how it's set up. This other stuff, no spaces if you're using this. And to get the contents out of that form control, this is the method that jQuery uses. So you'll see it's a little bit like .text, right? Well, all the methods are like that. But in order to get text out of something, right, some jQuery object, to get text, we do it like this. To get the value out of a form field, right, form control, we do it with val. And we can test this the same way we tested our other stuff before, and it's a good thing to do. Make sure it works. Make sure it gives you what you want. So we'll cut that, paste it inside the parentheses following console log, and we'll just do a quick test with it to see if it works. So let's see. Oh, I forgot to make it do anything. Oh no, I did. Console log. Yeah, so this is going to happen whenever we click any button. All right, so whenever we click any div, we are going to console log the current value of the form field. So let's type in there, hi there, and type before. And if we type in Harry Potter and type append. Anyway, so the console log tells us that our code is correct. It is going to work. So we go back to the jQuery and we say, all right, now I don't need console log. Around that, I have determined that yes, it works. This works. So what do I need? I'm thinking out loud here to help you do your algorithmic thinking, right? What do I need to get this value from this form control into the text that I'm writing onto the page? So previously I was writing this and this and this, which was kind of useless, right? It was good for an illustration, but yeah, what I want to write in there is what comes out of here. But rather than write this whole long thing, let's put it in a variable, right? So we can call it user input. How's that? Equals, right? And whoops, don't forget the semicolon at the end. All right, so then I can just replace this other stuff. And there's no quotations because now it's a variable, right? So just stick the variable in there, user input, right? So what have I done here? I have replaced our previous strings that we would insert before the paragraph with the class of Brown or after the paragraph with the class of Brown, etc., etc., right? I have replaced that previous paragraph of text with whatever the user's going to type. And we're going to know what the user types because we're going to get it here and we're going to put it in here. Now the one thing that's missing is that we don't have paragraph tags wrapping this up. And an easy way to do that is to say, let's modify the contents of this variable and say that they equal P plus the previous value of user input plus the closing P tag. All right, so all that does is it takes the value we got from the form control and we add a P tag in front of it and a slash P tag after it, and that is now the new value of user input. So let's save that and let's see what happens over here. So we reload, and now we type in Harry Potter and we say before, and there we go. What if I say Wonder Woman and I say prepend? There she is. And what if I say Black Panther? I'm on a superhero roll. After. Did it go after? It did. And who's another character that we could talk about? Let's say Sherlock Holmes, one of my personal favorites. Which one didn't we do yet? We didn't do append. There we go. What if we, right now, while Sherlock Holmes is still in there, still the value of the input text field, right? What if we say before? What if we say before again? What if we now say Hermione? Right? So you see how it's working? So our little script that took us a while to write, but other than the document ready that wraps up everything in our jQuery file here, right? Everything that is happening on that page now is wrapped up inside this one single event listener. And what that listener does is it listens for any click on any div, and when such a click occurs, it runs all this code every time. Every time you click a div on this page, this entire set of code runs from top to bottom. And so you've learned a bunch of new jQuery methods and how to make some jQuery objects that you didn't know about before. So I hope you can extrapolate from this and make some cool stuff.